Hello everybody! Last previous video we added a GUI with a empty black screen. So now we are going to be adding the snake, the head of the snake, and an apple. And before we do that, we are going to add a grid, just so that it will be easier for the user to see if they're on the same line with the apple when they're trying to eat the apple. This will make more sense when I show it to you. So, for this method, we're going to go private. It's best to go private for almost all cases. So we go private, void, and we're going to call this, let's call it grid. I feel like that's a pretty good name for it. So we're going to call it grid. And there's nothing in this private method. So this is a method that I mentioned in the previous video. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to call a final int, and we're just going to call this x. And this is going to equal, actually, we're going to call this width. And that's going to equal 1370. So what does final mean? Final just means it's constant. So this value here, 1370, cannot change. An int is just an integer, so it's a whole number between negative infinity to positive infinity. But in computers, it's like 2 to the power of 64 in both negative and positive, basically, roughly. And we capitalize the variable name. This is the variable name. This is what we're going to be referencing with. And this is known as a global variable because it can be reached anywhere inside this class. And typically you don't use global variables, but since it's a beginner project, it's just going to be a lot easier, and it's just going to be a much more fun experience if we just use it like this. So, just put a comma here, and we go final int. And I think I'm doing it wrong, actually. We go height, like this, and we're just going to say 710. So we call two different variables separated by a comma. So we go final int width equals 1370 and height equals 710. So those are my screen dimensions. And we capitalize the variable name because it's a constant value. It never changes, and we signify that by making it all caps. That's why this one here is all caps, because black as a color should never change. That's why it's in caps. So we're going to do using a for loop. So what a for loop is just a iteration. So we're going to go int equals I equals 0, and while I is less than, let's call another one. Let's say final int distance, distance, and we're going to call this 10. While that is less than the width divided by the distance, then it's gonna add. So what does this statement do? So we have an integer inside this for loop called I, and that's our iterator. And while I is less than the width divided by the distance, so while it's less than 137, it's going to keep increasing. So we're going to call a class inside these parentheses right here. We're going to call a class called graphics. And we're going to call grid inside here. And it's going to be using the name of G. So we're going to go G dot draw a line and this is it's going to be drawing lines down, but it's going to be drawing it across. That doesn't make any sense with how I just explained it. So basically it's going to draw lines like this. So we're going to start it at, so this is going to be x. So where is it going to start at x? It's going to be I times the distance, I believe, and y is just going to always equal 0. And again, we're going to go I times the distance. And we're going to use the height for that n bit. And we're going to make another one, draw a line, except for the opposite. So now this is 0. And we go I times distance. And we're going to set this to the width of the screen. And it's going to be times with the distance again. So hopefully you know what this symbol means. This symbol means that it's multiplied. So I multiplied by the distance. This symbol here, I++, just means if this condition is true, then it's going to increase by 1. And that just did that. And we're just going to set it to a nice looking color. Well, not necessarily nice, but a color that's not too strong, hopefully. Like so, and we're going to call it. And now when we run it, make sure you don't forget the semicolon. When we run it, there should be good lines. Ta-da! So now we use these grid lines so that we know that we're doing stuff right, basically. So we are going to be learning. How are we doing for time, by the way? Not doing well for time. So we got to hurry up. So we are going to be using an array. We're going to be using a 2D array. In fact, we're going to go into colon array. We do this. And this is going to be called our snake. Now, for now, we're just going to call this by 1, and this is going to be 2. Like so. And this is going to start at, by default, arrays start by 0, 0 in Java. In any other C-like languages, it's undefined. It's null. So we've got 1 dimension here, and we've got 2 dimensions here. That sounds very confusing, but basically, it's just our x and y's. So there are one group of x and y. That's basically all it means. And now, we're not going to do the same for the apple. We're going to just keep it basic, but we're going to keep it like this for the snake because we're going to use it to grow the tail later on. We're going to go apple x, like this, and we're going to get a apple y. So now, we are just going to call a function. Well, we're going to make our own function. I'm going to go private, and this is going to return an int. And we're going to call this random. There's already a random function, but that uses math. And we're going to put an argument inside here, and that's going to call the limit. So we're just going to return the int like this with the math. So it's calling the math class, math random times the limit plus 1. And this is not exactly right, I know this much. So math times a limit plus 1. And we're going to be dividing the limit, I believe. We're also going to be dividing it by the limit. So we'll just see how well this goes so far. So we go random, and since it's the x, we go width. And since it's the y, we go the height, like so. And now we make two more methods. These are going to be void, so we're going to go snake display to display our snake. And this is simple. This is just going to be we're going to set a color. So g.set, make sure you put in the argument inside here. So g.set color, and the color is just going to be green for the snake. And we're going to fill it, not fill, there we go, draw I meant. And so we're going to get the snake of 0, 0, like so. And we're going to get our snake 0, 0, 1, like so. And we're going to draw it by the distance. Here's that word again, the distance. And now we're going to get the apple to display. Again, we're going to be calling graphics G. And it's pretty much the same, so we go g.set color. Color's going to be red. And we're going to fill a rectangle. And this is going to be apple X. This is going to be apple Y. And this is going to be the distance. Like so. And we're going to call the snake display G, and the apple display G. Now, I am pretty sure I've done something wrong with with how I randomized the apple, but we will see how it goes. So we got it running, and there's, yeah. So that's the apple. And that should have been the snake. So what is going on here? Well, I know it's got something to do with here. So math times rand times the limit, so that it goes all the way to the screen, and then it's divided probably by distance. That probably would have been the better one. And it's almost working. We'll just run it again, see what we're getting. So it's divided by the distance. And probably has to be times by the limit again. No, I'm just being silly at the moment. My brain's not working. Okay. Well, I'll pick this up on another video. I'll correct the mistake in the beginning of the next video. But this is the end of part 2, and I'll see you guys in the next video.